Welcome back to The Rundown. Well, the showdown between vice presidential candidates Mike Pence and Kamala Harris last night in Salt Lake City was certainly a markedly different debate in style and in substance from the gloves-off spectacle of last week's first presidential debate. Well, the matchup was punctuated by a plexiglass divider as an added safety measure against the coronavirus. Also, a pesky fly that briefly took up residence in Vice President Pence's hair. Social media focused a lot on that. But there was substance. Mary Maloney has more in this report.
Vice President Mike Pence and Senator Kamala Harris facing off in Salt Lake City after President Trump and at least 10 other senior officials at the White House tested positive for COVID-19.
Whatever the vice president is claiming the administration has done, clearly it hasn't worked.
From the very first day, President Donald Trump has put the health of America first.
The candidates drawing stark contrasts in policy and personality.
President Donald Trump, who brought all of that experience 4 years ago,
and
turned this economy around by cutting taxes, rolling back regulation.
We are talking about an election in 27 days, where last week the President of the United States took a debate stage in front of 70 million Americans and refused to condemn white supremacists.
Not true.
Harris putting the focus on the man who isn't there, President Trump, and criticizing the administration's handling of the coronavirus pandemic.
They knew what was happening and they didn't tell you.
Pence painting Harris as a progressive by highlighting her past support for the Green New Deal and Medicare for All legislation.
Joe Biden and Kamala Harris consistently talk about mandates, and not just mandates with the coronavirus, but a government takeover of health care, the Green New Deal, all government control.
We have seen a pattern with this administration, which is they don't believe in science. And Joe's plan is about saying we're going to deal with it, but we're also going to create jobs.
In Salt Lake City, I'm Mary Maloney.
Well, how did they do? It depends on, of course, who you ask. And joining us now is Joel Rubin, Democratic strategist and former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State, speaking to us from Chevy Chase, Maryland, and Matthew RJ Brodsky, Senior Fellow at the Gold Institute for International Strategy in Washington, D.C. And, gentlemen, I want to start with a focus. There hasn't been a lot in this campaign on foreign affairs. Actually did poke its head a little bit there. Let's just start with a quote from Kamala Harris about the Iran nuclear agreement.
He's walked away from agreements. You can look at the Iran nuclear deal, which now has put us in a position where we are less safe because they are building up what might end up being a significant nuclear arsenal. We were in that deal, guys. We were in the Iran nuclear deal with friends, with allies around the country.
And Matt, I'll start with you. Kamala Harris thinks that is a selling point for voters, walking away from the Iran nuclear deal. What's your reaction when you heard that?
Well, it goes to show how little she understands foreign affairs, unfortunately. The fact is we are with all of our allies, especially in the Middle East, who are against the nuclear agreement with Iran, which again put Iran on a fast track to nuclear weapons just as screws turn away. But this shouldn't be surprising because in Biden's 47 years of serving in a political capacity, he's been proven to be wrong on most foreign affairs issues, such as going against wanting to kill bin Laden, against killing Qasem Soleimani, the IRGC general from Iran. And of course, even going back to the 1991 Gulf War, he was against that. Yet he was for the 2003 Iraq War. That's why Robert Gates, who served as defense secretary under Obama, had said that no one has been more wrong more frequently on foreign affairs than Biden. And
right. Okay, I want to give Joel a chance to respond to that and to my question.
Sure, happy to, and it's great to be with you, Calev. And look, Matt's recycling good talking points that continue to be used, but have no basis in fact. The fact is that the United States is at our lowest approval point globally in the history of our country, and that when it comes to Iran, we are isolated from our European allies who we need on board to ensure that Iran complies with the nuclear deal and to make sure that the pain is felt by Iran if they don't. But that's gone. So we're continuing even today to try to sanction Iran, as our allies in Europe are saying It's a humanitarian crisis that we, the United States, are creating, and Iran is accelerating its nuclear activities. So we're in a very precarious position globally right now. We're teetering on the edge, and more of these policies are certain to ensure that Iran will get that nuclear bomb and that we will be more isolated.
All right, and Israel also got a brief mention here. Let's take a look. Vice President Pence bringing it up.
President Trump kept his word when we moved the American embassy to Jerusalem, the capital of the state of Israel. When Joe Biden was vice president, they promised to do that, and they never did. We've stood strong with our allies, but we've been demanding.
And again, I have to ask you, Matt, is that going to get more votes for the Republican side, especially from Jewish voters who have traditionally supported Democratic candidates?
I think it certainly should, and the polling indicates that there's a higher portion of Jews voting for Trump this time around than previously, but it doesn't change the fact that Jews generally around the world tend to be a lot more liberal, and especially so in the United States. It's unfortunate because the actual moving of the embassy was the mythology that President Trump was able to destroy, which pretty much opened the door for him doing so much in the Middle East that is good, that he should be rewarded for. And as to what Joel said, look, if you want to define America's allies as the European elites, which is apparently what Biden wants to do, and make good cause with making economic deals with Iran, then we just view foreign affairs and national security quite differently.
All right, Joel, your chance to respond to those points.
Well, I think it's very important, first of all, to note that Vice President Pence misstated what the Obama administration's position was on Jerusalem, which was about ensuring that it was part of a negotiation between the Israelis and the Palestinians. But there has been broad bipartisan support for years and decades to move our embassy to Jerusalem, and that's a fact. And I think that for President Trump, the challenge here with the American Jewish vote is that it's not just about Israel. You know, he could not denounce white nationalism, white supremacy at the last debate, and that panics American Jews, where we see our FBI and the ADL and other organizations inside and outside government saying that white supremacy is the #1 threat domestically from a terrorist perspective, and anti-Semitism is deeply integrated into that. And President Trump just has not spoken out aggressively enough and taken a firm stand. And so Jewish voters are looking at that much more than they are on foreign policy right now.
Right. Now, of course, foreign policy was only a very small part. This was primarily about domestic politics, coronavirus. I think it's safe to say, given two factors, let's just say age and health, there was more weight put on this vice presidential debate than any previous one I can imagine. So let's ask who really came out ahead in this encounter. And I think maybe this time we'll start with you, Joel.
Well, thank you. And it really was a good debate for those of us who love political debate, because we got a chance to actually hear issues and differences of opinion. I think clearly Kamala Harris won the evening because she was able to basically articulate the argument that the Trump administration has failed to deliver and it should not be rehired. And for Vice President Pence, he was on the defensive all night long. He was mansplaining quite often to Kamala Harris. And we saw a situation where Kamala Harris was not this monster that President Trump seemed to describe her as this morning on Fox News, which is incredibly damaging language to call a sitting U.S. senator a monster because she has political positions that differ from yours. So I think it's clear that she got under the president's skin and won that debate.
All right. Matt, a lot of comment about a certain fly, but let's put that aside because, as I said, this was a serious, substantial debate that I think Americans could be proud of anyway at that level. Your reaction, who do you think came out ahead?
Look, I think if you just look at this debate in isolation, Pence did a fantastic job and certainly won this debate. I mean, the fact is he was able to make the case positively and to articulate what the Trump administration has done. But he also did things that the media has failed to do over and over again, like set the record straight on Charlottesville, what Trump said there, which was he said there were fine people on both sides of the debate over tearing down the statue of Robert E. Lee, and actually then condemned white supremacists by name that. And he's done so over and over again. But he also went on to try to smoke Kamala Harris out about the Supreme Court. They want to expand the Supreme Court. They're looking at trying to make D.C. part of the United States as a state, and Puerto Rico, and a number of other issues that, frankly, they've just skated away as Democrats, saying, I don't want to have to say what my position is because that would make it an issue. This is an election campaign. You're right. It's an issue. He was best able to do that. Now, whether that makes a difference going forward, who knows? I don't know if Trump will learn some pointers, basically, from how Pence.
Joe, I'm going to give you just 30 seconds. You were shaking your head during some of that, just very quickly.
Yeah, no, I think that one can try 6.5 dozen ways than the other and never find a good explanation for Donald Trump's inability to condemn white supremacy, and he couldn't do it in the last debate. And he retweets QAnon followers and says he loves their support. And QAnon was just banned from Facebook.
Gentlemen, I don't want to recreate the debate here exactly, but there is something I have to ask you. As we speak at this moment, not only the second scheduled debate between President Trump and Joe Biden now looks like in peril, it may not happen. Now they're saying even the third debate may not. I have to ask you, Matt, is that a good strategy? I'm asking Matt, is that a good strategy for President Trump not to proceed with these debates, even under some of these revised conditions?
Look, I'd prefer, first of all, he would have waited to respond until the end of the day because everyone knows that Pence had won the debate. Let that be the story for the day. But in the end, no, he shouldn't do a virtual debate. We've already seen and know that you have Biden who uses teleprompters and will have his staff in the room if it's a virtual debate. We want to have a man-on-man debate in the same room. It'll be well past the time that Trump would still be testing positive for having COVID. They should really have an in-person debate. This shows that the commission, who pretty much approved this with Democrats first, without even consulting with the Trump team, that it's just pretty much trying to rig the debates. It does Biden a favor, does no good for President Trump. Hopefully they'll rethink this.
Right. Joel, there were senior Democrats who, after the first debate, already were advising Joe Biden not to proceed with the following two. Does this give him an out or something that maybe he, as leading in the polls, he wanted anyway?
Well, Joe Biden always said he wanted a debate, but there's a critical missing piece of information in this discussion, which is that Donald Trump has coronavirus, and we need to make sure that he's safe and he's not infecting people. And until there's clarity and transparency about his health and when he actually tested sick and what his testing is, there can't be a debate in person. But look at us. We're doing a virtual debate. All of America has been on virtual and Zoom calls for the last half year. Trump should be able to man up, be like us, be like Americans, and do a debate. They can do it in a separate room where there are no teleprompters like Donald Trump also likes to use, and they can organize it in a way that would meet those needs. But Trump should not be rejecting this debate. He should do what all Americans have had to go through for the last half year to really know what it's like to live in the pandemic.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there, but I do think for the sake of the democratic process, there should be another debate, be it live, if possible, virtual, if that's all there is, or in whatever new way technology maybe devises in the next coming weeks. In the meantime, thank you for this debate, Joel Rubin and